Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open Books, Open Minds, a celebration of reading and literacy. I am Brandy Grant, a teacher librarian in Frisco ISD, and I'm thrilled to be your moderator for this incredible conversation. Today's theme, Meeting Readers Where They're At, is at the heart of what we do as educators, authors, and literacy advocates. Our mission isn't just to teach reading, it's to inspire curiosity, to spark imagination, and to make every student feel that books belong to them. When we truly open books, we open minds, expanding perspectives, building empathy, and creating lifelong readers. We're joined by an amazing panel of authors who understand this deeply and bring stories to life in ways that meet readers of all backgrounds and experiences. You'll hear about their own journeys as readers and writers, how they connect with young readers today, and practical strategies for fostering engaged reading communities in schools and libraries. So, let's dive in and start with some personal stories because behind every author is a reader with a unique journey. Authors, please turn on your cameras and introduce yourselves. Tell us your name, the title of your latest book, and maybe one fun fact about you as a reader or a writer. How about Gail to start us off?
Hi, everybody. My name is Gail Foreman. I am the author of, I think, 13 published books at this point. One of the most recent ones, which I'm here to talk about today, is Not Nothing, my second middle grade novel. And a fun fact about me as a writer is that I became one accidentally.
Wow. Megan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Dowd Lambert. I am the author of Reading Picture Books with Children, which is actually a book more for teachers and librarians and parents and other caregivers about reading picture books with children. And a fun fact about me as a reader is that when I was a kid, I really wasn't much of a picture book reader. It wasn't until I was an adult that I came to love picture books, and now I'm very passionate about how we can share them with kids.
Thank you. Kwame?
Hey everyone, my name is Kwame Mbalia. Everybody has their books near them, and I am unprepared, but I have a cool little postcard that you can't see because my background is blurred. So just assume that is the best postcard you've ever seen in your life. I'm here on behalf of my book, Jax Freeman and the Tournament of Spirits. One fun fact about me is that I read the Lord of the Rings omnibus, so all three books in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, when I was in fourth grade, and that won me a reading contest that allowed me, my older brother, and my mother to go see Michael Jordan come play our Milwaukee Bucks.
What?
That's a flex. What?
Yeah.
Reading,
Okay.
reading gets you everywhere.
Okay. Dana, take us home.
Thank you. My name is Dana Vanderlocht, and I'm author of a novel in verse called Enemies in the Orchard. This week it's its second birthday, and a story about me is that I started out as a travel writer, which sounds really exciting, but I spent a lot of time in a cubicle. But I did get to go on one group tour and stay in an ice hotel overnight.
Sure. That's cool. Thank you for all of those introductions. It's always so inspiring to hear like the stories behind the storytellers. So now that we know who you are today as authors, we're going to take a step back and talk about where your reading journey began. So my question for the room is, what kind of reader were you growing up? Like, were you an avid reader, or did it take time to discover the right books that hooked you? And then how does that apply to your writing now? So, Gail?
I don't remember sort of my early reading. I do remember that like I was not considered an advanced reader, but I had a friend named Allison Rod who was, and one day I was going to her house after school and I got to stay in the advanced reading group and they're like, "Oh, wow, you are. You should stay in this group," which I think shows some of the difficulty of sorting second graders that way. But by the time I was like in like fifth or sixth grade, my dad would take me every week to the Crown bookstore and I would buy Sweet Dreams Romance. And I graduated from that to like Jackie Collins, Harold Robbins, like at a pretty early age, like 12 or 13, learning things that, perhaps I should not have, but didn't mean no harm. But from there, I kind of graduated to sort of like more quote literary fiction of the kind we want. And I think about this all the time when parents or educators or anybody's worried about kids reading the wrong kind of book. And really, what we are looking to do is just get it so that the lore of that book sitting on your shelf is like a siren song to you, which I think is harder now with all the other noise, but that's how it was for me. Like I just wanted to delve into book, and I always have books on me as a kid, and that has sort of carried on into adulthood.
Thank you. Megan?
I don't remember a time when I wasn't a reader. I started reading really early and was an avid reader all through my childhood. My mother says she used to have to tell me to put down my books and go outside to play. Um, and that I'm still that way. I still have to remind myself to get up and move if I get lost in a book. And as an adult, I am usually reading many books at one time, whether it's an ebook, a print book, audiobooks. Audiobooks count as reading. And as a child, though, I was so driven by fiction, especially historical fiction. Mildred Taylor books were huge for me as a kid. I loved the whole Logan family series, and really anything that took me out of my current time and place. But in reality, I wasn't much of a fantasy reader as a kid. It was as a mother that I started to read a lot of fantasy because that's right where my children went. So yeah, I've loved reading my whole life, and I'm passionate about engaging kids with books.
Kwame?
Before I answer that question, I feel like I didn't get the email or the memo because everyone has really like fantastic glasses on. Um, hold on.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on a second. This is like the second time I've worn these. Hold on. All right. Okay.
And now we're
Hmm.
ready.
All
We're
right.
ready
We're
now.
good now.
Okay.
I have to adopt this pose when I have these on. You know what? I always tell this story. I wholeheartedly believe my mother tricked me into reading, into loving reading. And the way that she did it is I come from a family of four kids, two older, two slightly older, two slightly younger. I was one of the older. And so when the two slightly younger, it was their nap time on the weekends or in the summer, my mother would tell us older ones that um, you can take a nap with the littles or you can read a book. And so I'm like, I'm not reading no stinking book. I know that. I know, or I'm not taking no stinking nap. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to, I'm not a baby anymore. Look at me. I'm going to read this book. And I just started reading. I got hooked. And it's so wild to me because like I'm on TikTok way too much. And the Milwaukee Public Library, specifically the Martin Luther King branch, has had a couple of viral videos recently. And I grew up 4 blocks away from there. And that's where I would walk, or that's where Friday, after my mother would pick us up from school, she would take us and tell us, you can check out as many books as you want. And, my brother would walk out with 2, my sister with 3, my little brother with like a couple picture books. And I would be waddling out with, books under the chin, trying to keep them steady. And my mother would get not mad, but she would just be like, really out in disbelief because I would read all of them before the weekend was over and would just be itching to go back to the library. So reading was in my blood from a very, very early age, although I was bedazzled into it.
Dana?
So I grew up in a family of storytellers. They weren't necessarily all readers. My grandparents had an apple orchard, and so there was a lot of time spent around the table with a lot of storytelling. But I don't remember a lot of books until I got a little bit older, and my cousin and I started reading the Babysitters Club series. And my cousin lived about an hour away, which at the time felt like it was forever away, right? And we would write these weekly letters, and those characters became like real people in our lives. And we would, did you hear what happened to Christy or Marianne? And I think that that is really what sparked the idea that stories hold so much power, and the characters in a book can feel so close to you. And kind of like those stories I'd always heard growing up about real people, these books also brought those worlds to life for me. And I think about as a teacher, I taught eighth grade for a long time, and it was that that community of readers that really brought reading to life for me.
Thank you. I love hearing about those early reading experiences because they really shape how we think about readers today and really how we, are a reader. So, speaking of that, we're going to shift into how you approach engaging young readers now. So, our panel, in terms of meeting students where they're at, how can educators and authors meet readers where they are, especially those readers who may be reluctant or struggling or disengaged? I hate to say reluctant but just haven't found that right book yet, or that right theme, or that right genre. It's going to happen. It's just they haven't done it yet. So how can we keep them engaged? I'm going to mix it up. Megan, can you start with us?
Sure. I think choice is key, allowing kids to choose what they want to read, and making sure they have choices, right? I'm a big advocate of auditing your bookshelves for diversity and inclusion, and diversity and inclusion in terms of human experience, certainly, and identity and representation, but also in terms of genre, also in terms of reading level, also in terms of just all different kinds of content that might be just the right book to hook that reader, and allowing that reader to make the choice once you've set the table. Um, I also think that it's really important that we include illustration as an entry point for some readers who might not be as drawn to text for whatever reason. Wordless picture books can really level the playing field so that any reader can come and read a picture book by engaging with the illustration. Certainly graphic novels, picture books, all kinds of illustrated literature can really help children engage with the book by giving them different ways of entering the world of story. And my book is all about that. Like, how do we use picture book art and design in order to get kids talking about what they see and giving them a way to make meaning out of what authors and illustrators are presenting them?
Thank you for saying that. Gail, do you have anything to add?
I do. I have two daughters, and one of them learned to read in first grade and went from sounding things out to reading the Ramona books by the end of the grade. And my other daughter has struggled her entire life to read. And I think it was a real eye opener for me. Just generally, she's sort of has all kinds of learning differences, to not assume that your own way of absorbing information is universal. Because A, you're not going to get the readers that way, and B, you're going to make those kids feel like there's something wrong with them because their brains don't work the same way. So I'm really glad that I think Megan mentioned audio, which is just as much reading, and same with graphic novels. So I think that is important. I'm not going to educate educators on how to do this. You all know better than anybody, but we also all know what has been happening in terms of attention fracturing among all of us, and how hyperstimulated kids are getting even before they come to learn to read, which makes the sort of the work of reading so much harder. And I'm glad to see schools are starting to sort of ban phones and what have you. But I think about what works in this day and age in terms of getting readers excited, and you see sort of the TikTok thing. So it's we've seen reading really go down with sort of young adults in particular, but we've seen the TikTok. So how do you make reading feel like an event? How do you make people feel like they are part of something? You can sort of leverage that FOMO, so that it's this exciting thing, and as sort of Megan said, offering it in different ways so everybody has an entry point. But we're such social animals, and I think reading is something that has been done siloed and solo a lot of time. And how can we kind of create that excitement about this, and get people wanting to be a part of it, and wanting to kind of push past whatever kind of discomfort they might have, or and maybe help aid the concentration that we know for all of us has become more difficult to sort of have.
Thank you for saying that. Dana, because I wanted you to weigh in, especially in the verse novel realm.
Yeah. I mean, I would echo so much of what Megan and Gail already said about choice, about not putting limits on what is real reading, audiobooks, novels in verse. graphic novels. I often find with a novel in verse, it's interesting because a lot of adult readers pick it up and go, "Oh, I can't do poetry." And like, I bet you could. But the opposite happens when like a middle school student picks up a book and says like, "Oh, there's space in here. Like there's room in the page. There's um I don't feel overwhelmed by the amount of black words, right? And so I think there's so many ways to enter reading. But I remember when my own son was about 11, he came up from the basement and he had just read Kwame Alexander's The Crossover, and he was like, "Mom, this book, like this book." And I think it was the space in there. He's always been a bit of a slower processor. And so yeah, just echoing that idea that there are so many different entry points and different ways to be a reader. And I think having so many options for students and I think also places in school where reading isn't limited. And there's also that kind of safe and sacred space carved out for them. So um, fewer distractions, quiet spaces, and then also maybe louder spaces where they can talk and be excited. So um, there's there's so many ways and not one path. And I would agree with Gal. I think that we have so many teachers and media center specialists who are just doing amazing work in making reading come alive for our students.
Thank you for that. Kwame?
I don't know if I have too much more to add. I think everyone had really excellent points. I, access is opportunity. If there aren't books there, you can't read, right? So if you can surround yourself or surround our young people with books, then when the opportunity arises, they'll pick one up. I use my son as an example. My son is the definition of an iPad kid because he was born during quarantine. He's born during the pandemic. I'm trying to teach three other kids, who are at home trying to learn, um, write, help my wife with her job, and we have this kid. And sometimes that's why I don't fault parents. Sometimes just handing them the iPad so that you cannot burn your food on the stove is what has to be done. Well, now he asks for the iPad all the time. And, what we've decided to do is he has his room and it is filled with books. He has too many books
Mhm.
lining every wall in his room. And so what I will do, it is so easy to just be like, no, 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 go to your room. No, find something to play with. I will take my work upstairs to his room and I will sit in his room with him because I can write. I can write anywhere, I can edit, send emails, so many emails, way too many emails. I can do my emails in his room. I'll sit there on the floor and he's wandering around. And what will eventually happen is he will go pick up a book and he will either sprawl like across my legs and read, or he'll sit like neck on my back, or he'll sit next to me and he'll flip through the pages. He'll sound out some words. He will interpret the pictures, which is why illustrations matter. And sometimes he'll just make up his own stories, but access equals opportunity. And also, kids emulate what they see, they imitate what you do. So maybe you all, and by you all, I'm pointing fingers at myself as well, should be looking at how often you're reading as well, because they will then see, oh, mommy, daddy, my teachers, my adults, my trusted adults aren't just reading because they have to. They're reading for fun. Maybe I can do that too.
Love that. That was such a great point. Those are such powerful strategies for sparking curiosity and creating some connections. So now let's talk about how these ideas translate a little bit more into classrooms and libraries. And I struggled with this question, but I'm going to ask it, especially for my fellow librarians. I'm always trying to master the art of engaging readers with book talks. Sometimes it's hard to convince a 12-year-old to read a book. So what do you think are some components of an effective book talk? Like, how can teachers and readers go beyond the summary? That's just a summary to hook readers. So I'm going to start with Gail.
I mean, I would just look for the hook, whatever you think it is, and use humor, even if it's a serious book. I mean, not nothing definitely has some heavy themes, but when I go and talk to kids about it, I open with the fact that it's about a 12-year-old boy who did something really, really bad, like so bad that it got him arrested. And I'm like, do you want to know what it was? Because it was really bad. And of course they say, yeah. And I'm like, do you really want to know? And I get them like crescendoing, like, yes, I want to know. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you. You have to read the book. And I've had kids get really mad at me. It's one kid sort of very after the class, he came up to me like a mafia kid. He's like, I'm gonna give you two choices. You could tell me what happens, or I'm gonna go Google it. And I'm like, here's a third choice. You could read the book. So, I just think anything that like gets them itchy and excited, and maybe less is more sometimes when you're just trying to find the entry point. So I would say like it's different for every book. And as an educator, you know the thing that got you into it. And I think you can always most authentically sell something that is resonant with you. So like find the thing that you loved about it, and then like find a fun way in to sort of tease them in and create that sort of like sense of like I want to know and they want to be part of something together to figure it out. That's what I do.
Love. Dana.
Um, I would totally agree, Gal. The other thing that I found worked really well in the classroom was name dropping of other students. So I would say, oh, so and so loved this book, right? Or I had this student who claimed that he had never found anything that he ever loved, but then he found this book. So I found that if you can attach another student, their age or with their interest to the book, they're likely to want to grab it as well. And it helps them, I think, to kind of figure out like what kind of reader am I and who are my classmates that are the same kind of readers, and then create that kind of enthusiasm when they talk to each other about books.
That's good. Kwame?
Oh man. Um, I think sometimes you got to get in the weeds. You know what I mean? And by the weeds, I mean you got to get into the children, the young readers' interests, and then work backwards, work that way. Um, and then also just like, I mean, you all know that if you like this, you'll like that, comparison. So for example, I love anime. I'm a very big anime fan. And when I go and do talk about my book or books in general, you know, inevitably anime comes up. Like, yeah, One Piece, or did you like My Hero Academia is better and this and that. And then I'll tell them like I wrote, this book, Jax Freeman, the second book, because my favorite anime moment is the Chunin exams and the first Naruto. And everybody's, some people are like, what? And then the people that know are like, no, the Chunin exams. I was like, I loved the Chunin exams, but they never got finished. They were interrupted. And I was like, I want the Chunin exams to finish. I want to see who made it, who graduated, who made it to the next level of being a ninja. And then all of a sudden you have this core group of people who are just excited because they know exactly what you're talking about, right? So now they want to investigate, one, to see if you're lying, to see if this is really like the tuning exams, or if it is, now we're into it. And then secondarily, you have these people who see these people excited, right? And they're like, wait a second, FOMO. Like, no, I want to be in. I want to know what's happening, right? We're pulling up clips of the tuning exams. We're like, oh, okay, da 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 da. Everyone knows Naruto. Maybe not everyone knows that particular moment, and so we've like created this little vortex of literacy where everyone is sort of like circling around the book, trying to figure out if they're going to read the book, but we've piqued interest about the book. And the adage is that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. You can't force people to read a book, but you can create sufficient interest and a magnetic charm about it that they might flip through the pages. After that, it's the author's job to hook them. You're off the hook. Like if they don't, you've done your job.
Thank you for that. Megan?
So the whole book approach storytime model that I write about in my book is for picture books, but you can take some of its techniques and apply them to book talks for any kind of book. Primarily, or I think most easily, that would be by reading the book jacket. So instead of giving kids a summary of the book, just hold up the book so that everyone's looking at the jacket and ask open-ended questions so that instead of you providing a summary, you're creating engagement through an emotional and a cognitive investment to say, what is this jacket telling me about this story? And three questions I always recommend, which come from visual thinking strategies, are what do you see happening in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? And what else can we find? And the first question grounds us in the visual. That word happening inspires narrative. So instead of just saying, what do you see? You get a list. What do you see happening in this picture?
Mm.
The second question, what do you see that makes you say that? Ask for evidentiary thought, which is the cornerstone of critical thinking. And then that third question says, dig deeper. And maybe it even inspires debate because maybe one person has evidence for one idea and another has another. I've used this countless times, and it is just a tool to throw in your pocket and use it.
Megan, do you have a way that you could that you would do that for a non-picture book?
Yeah, I would use the book jacket.
Mm.
So I do not have a novel at hand because I've not written one, but I wrote an
I
early.
do. I'm going to steal that from you, though. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, just eyes on art and then look at that jacket art and those three questions. What do you see happening in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? What else can we find? It creates such rich conversation as long as you keep it open-ended and you're not looking for a certain answer. Even if they predict something totally wrong about the book, who cares? You've enticed them through the book jacket, and that's created that cognitive and emotional connection to the book.
It also made kids who maybe feel less confident in their sort of reading interpretation
Yeah.
skills immediately feel like they have a capability there. So
Yes, that's what
smart.
the whole book approach is all about. When I started doing it at the Carl, people started coming to my story times there, and I'd have parents say, he's never sat through story time. And I'd say, well, that's because he wasn't just sitting, right? Like
Mm.
we were talking and we were sharing ideas and we were engaged. And yes, it works for picture books, but absolutely it can work for a book talk, for getting kids hooked into reading a longer text.
You have dropped some gems, Megan. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. So we have just received some great ideas for making reading come alive in the classroom. So now let's shine a spotlight on your work. Um, so what I would love for you to do is give a 30-second elevator book pitch for your book, because 30 seconds really is how long the kid is gonna give us the opportunity to convince them to read it. So if you could just give us your book talk, that would be amazing. So let's start with Dana.
All right. So this is Enemies in the Orchard. It is a World War II novel in verse. So there's lots of space in the pages. And it's a story of Claire and Carl. Carl is a 17-year-old German prisoner of war, and he has just been sent to Michigan. And Claire is a 14-year-old girl who's living on an apple orchard, and Carl has been assigned to work on her farm. And when two enemy worlds collide, these two have to figure out what it means to be human and what it means to learn how to live next to your enemy.
Mm.
Wow.
That's not
Gail?
timely at all, is it?
I know, right?
No,
Good.
no.
Gail?
So if I'm doing the sort of elevator pitch to adults, I will say it is The Princess Bride meets Schindler's List for not nothing, because people are like, what is that? And that's enough. But when I'm doing it for kids, that means nothing. So I say, there's about a 12-year-old boy named Alex who has done something really, really bad, so bad he gets arrested and has to go before a judge. And no, I'm not going to tell you what it is. But as a result of this, a social worker arranges for him to spend the summer sort of volunteering at an old age home where he meets Josie, who is 107 years old, is a Polish Jewish Holocaust survivor, and is just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting to die. And for reasons neither one of them understand, Alex kind of winds up in Josie's room, and Josie begins telling him a story about the young woman who sort of saved his life. And it's a story really about what it means to rise to the occasion, what happens when you haven't had that opportunity, and what happens when someone invites you to be your better self.
Wow, thank you. Kwame?
All right,
Mike's off.
I'm gonna test to see if this is actually 30 seconds. I'm starting the timer here. All right, here we go. So Jax Freeman, the series, is really my love letter to Naruto. It takes place with Black families in Chicago. And according to this lovely book jacket in book 2, Jax and his friends have been training for a tournament in which their skills will be tested against the best summoners in the world. But nothing could have prepared them for what happens when someone tries to sabotage the games with cryptids.
I think you got it under 30.
I think so. I think so. I
Yeah,
got
that
3
was
seconds
tight.
left.
That was like a tight 25.
And Megan, I wanted to save this space for you. I definitely feel that you can book talk this book. I know you're going to be speaking to parents and educators, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to book talk too.
Thank you. So I published Reading Picture Books with Children, How to Shake Up Storytime and Get Kids Talking About What They See back in 2015. This year it's coming out in a 10th anniversary edition, and it's expanded with storytime plans that help teachers, librarians, parents, and other caregivers use the whole book approach to engage kids with the picture book as a visual art form. This work comes out of my time as an educator at the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art and a former lecturer at Simmons University. So I'm working with adults, but the goal is to reach kids.
Thank you for your work and congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So now let's zoom out one more time and talk about the big picture of how we keep books and reading central in the lives of young people, because you all have discussed about the various distractions. So my question is, it's more of advice. So what advice would you give librarians, educators, teachers who are trying to create inclusive reading spaces where every student feels welcome, especially in light of, it's difficult right now. So what could be some words to provide joy or encouragement during this time? Because it's a little rough out here for educators and librarians. So Kwame, will you start us off?
Sure. This is advice I give everyone, including myself, when I think I know better. And that is to sometimes let the young people lead, right? Put them in charge. Give them the responsibility of, all right, what would you like to read? If you could choose a book, choose a chapter, choose an essay, choose a short story, choose a poem for us, what would you want to read, right? And it's less, as someone who has 2 teenagers who are going through battling sort of the fatigue of books that are chosen for them. um I'm learning, what it takes to keep that spark engaged rather it being smothered. And that means sometimes they have to be the ones to take the point, right? So tell me, I want to know what you're interested in. This is the curriculum, but I want to know what you're interested in, and where they lay, and let's talk about it. It could be a cookbook, it could be a nonfiction about race cars, it could be, a book, the last book that you remember reading and having fun with, which was back in 3rd grade. Bring that book. We will talk about it, analyze it, and we will have fun doing it, because in the end, reading is going to be entertaining.
I love that. Dana?
Yeah, I love that too. I also think I do think teachers and librarians feel a little beat up right now. And I think one piece of advice I have is just to keep remembering that their work matters so much. And when it gets hard, I think I try to tell myself that like safe isn't safe and comfortable aren't always the same thing. And it's okay to be a little uncomfortable at times. I always tell the story. I was in a yoga class once and I said like, ow, this hurts. And the instructor said, does it hurt or is it uncomfortable? And I think sometimes it's okay for us to be in spots where it's a little uncomfortable, or we're trying something new, or we're keeping a safe spot open for a student that maybe feels a little bit hard for us as adults, because I do think that our work matters, and getting kids access to books matters so deeply.
Thank you for that. Megan?
There's a theorist who I quote a lot in my work, whose name was Louise Rosenblatt, and she said, books don't only happen to people, people also happen to books. And I love that line because it says we can all read the same text and have wildly different interpretations and responses to it. And I think that is so important to remember, and it really validates all the work that teachers and librarians do every day. Where story time, where the library, where the English class, where any class where you get together and talk about a book, it's a microcosm of democracy. Because if we all read a book together and we have different opinions and we can talk through those different opinions with evidence and with respect for one another's dignity, well, then we can change the world, can't we? And that's a very small space, yes, but small is all, right? If we can do something small in our own little circle, there will be a ripple effect. There will be that stone that hits the pond and sends out the ripples. So I think that the work that we're doing as teachers, librarians, as writers is absolutely crucial in this moment, in any moment, because it gives us a chance to connect to each other. It gives us a chance to listen to each other, to differ from one another, and to rise above those differences and see what we share in common.
Wow, thank you for that. Gail?
I love all of what you just said, Kwame. When my daughter, when she entered middle school, she stopped reading until she got into college, and then it was like when it wasn't assigned reading, she became a voracious reader again. And Dana, I was literally in a yoga class yesterday where teachers sort of said the difference between pain and discomfort, and I think learning to live with discomfort is a superpower. And Megan, I absolutely agree with you. Books are empathy delivery devices. They are incredible. And I would say right now, all the things that are happening in this country, it seems like one of the things that are happening is a profound empathy crisis. And it's not lost on me that we've seen novel reading in particular on a steep decline. And I don't have an easy answer because I want to kind of honor the incredibly hard place educators are in right now. I'm on the National Board of Authors Against Book Bans. So, in addition to kind of like organizing and trying to kind of push back against the small minority of people that have really been pushing these sort of vilification of teachers for the most just cynical of reasons, um, we've really seen what educators are sort of dealing with. And I cannot imagine what it would be right now to sort of be in a classroom where you're having to like double, you think about whether putting a book on a shelf is going to potentially cost you your job or cost you to be doxxed. So all I want to say from you there is that like there is a growing collective organization pushing back against this. And sort of Brandy, I think you're the school board you're in. We saw a huge swing in a lot of Texas school boards once people started actually paying attention to this. So that is happening. The advice you all gave was incredible. And I just want to sort of say from this side of it, I know it is not just difficult right now. It is sort of is a little terrifying to be an educator. And so I just send you all the love in my heart for what you do, and know that I spend a good chunk of my days now working to make sure that the freedom to read that most Americans want for themselves and for their children is preserved.
Thank you so much. That is so helpful. Thank you, all of you. Before we wrap up, I want to do a quick lightning round to end on a fun note. So there's only one question, and it's the most important question that I always ask authors because I'm nosy. And I want to know what's next for you, any upcoming projects, anything we should be looking out for on the forefront that your publisher is okay with you sharing, because I don't want your publishers jumping through the screen. Any news that you would like to share Okay, I'm going to start with Megan.
So I just started a doctoral program in religion and philosophy, and so I'm starting to have that part of my life find its way into my writing, and I'm writing a lot about my family's French roots and our observance of some lesser known holidays like Advent and Candlemas, and those books haven't found a home yet, but maybe they will someday.
Dana?
I am right now doing a lot of research. I'm always looking for kind of historical stories that have gotten lost. And I'm doing some research on poor farms and poor houses, and seeing if that turns into another novel in verse.
I love that you said you're doing the research first. That's so important. I know
Yeah,
it's extensive.
yeah. And
Kwame?
I mean, I have a Star Wars book coming out in a month. That's always exciting for the
I've heard
nerd
of
in me.
Star Wars before. Can you share a little bit more about this?
It is the Finn and Jenna about their time when they were stormtroopers and the pebbles that got the stones and the avalanche rolling into how they rebelled and abandoned the First Order. Um, but also a personal project I'm working on is I've we used to have these upper and lower middle grade categories, and I've always sort of been upper. But my wife shared a quote with me that I it just lodged in my heart, and that is, from kindergarten to second grade, we are learning to read, and then we hit third grade and we are reading to learn. And so I am working on heavily illustrated books that focus on STEM and language with some very odd creatures for young middle grade students to kind of fan that spark before they get further up into the middle grade, just so that we can keep that enthusiasm going.
Congratulations, Gail.
Girl, I got so many projects going. I'm a true Gemini. I'm working on my next YA novel, which is a love story. I haven't written a straight up love story in a while. Of course, it's me, so it's like out of horror love story. Um, I am. I've written sort of a weird feminist dystopian anti-capitalist book. I don't know where that goes. I just published a really fun short story called The Kitty Rescue Committee that I'm potentially going to expand into a series. And then I also have dog books. And yeah, just multiple things juggling all at one time. So that's what I got going.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. I want to thank you all, amazing panelists, for your insight and your inspiration. And thank you to everyone here for your commitment to fostering a love of reading. If there's one thing that I know I'm going to take away, and I hope everyone takes away, is that when we open books, we truly open minds. And by meeting readers where they are, we can help every child see themselves as a reader. So my hope to everyone, my challenge is to let's keep creating those opportunities one book at a time. So thank you so much, authors, for being with us today, and thank you everyone for attending our panel. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, Brandy.